In this special video, I'm going to show you the differences between trials and BMX, or BMX and trials. That's probably the title of the video. I bought this off a website as a complete bike. Sunday makes this bike. This is the Gary Young Pro. It was on sale. This is the 2011, so I picked it up for like 550 bucks. I don't know where my front peg went. I usually run 2 pegs when I did ride BMX, so who knows where that one went. But I still have a back peg on there, so I guess I could still feeble. Going to this bike, as far as price, this was really expensive. I think this bike came out to like 3,500 bucks. Where did all that money go? Well, the first difference is most BMX bikes are made... That one's blue. Well, yeah, that would be the first difference. That one's blue, that one's black. Other than that, frames on the BMX bikes are usually made of chromoly steel. The trials bikes are usually made of aluminum. The next difference is brakes. Trials, if you're doing like real trials, is all about brakes. You want to have really good brakes on this bike. I have hydraulic brakes, so those brakes on their own are very expensive. I have disc brakes on both wheels and they're both hydraulic, so that adds a lot of the cost to the bike. On this bike, I don't even have brakes, so you have to put your feet down or put your foot in the tire or just not go too fast because you're not going to be able to stop in time if you have traffic coming or something like that. But weight reduction life, when you're doing bar spins and things like that, it's annoying with the cables getting in the way. Like I know with the brake levers, doing bar spins, like it can get annoying with them. So that's why it's nice to just run brakeless with the BMX bike. So that's another difference between the two. There's a lot of people who are riding BMX these days, so that drives down the price of how much it costs to build a BMX bike. Trials, however, there aren't quite as many people doing it, so it's more of a specialty thing. So that keeps the prices a little bit higher. There aren't really any companies yet, other than like Inspired and like some of the other more pure trials brands that make trials bikes. There's like a bunch of different companies who make BMX bikes who compete with each other, who can lower the prices of the BMX bikes just because there's so many companies out there. But with trials bikes, there's less companies, so there's a little bit less competition between them, so they can charge a little bit more, and they need to charge more to be able to make these. So as far as capabilities of tricks, the tricks are kind of different and similar in a way. I'll point out the main differences between the types of tricks you can do on both these bikes. So with this BMX bike, it has a cassette hub on it. It's not a free coaster like some BMX bikes these days. So as far as tricks that you can do on a BMX bike that you might find a little bit easier than on the trials bike, when you're doing things like tail whips, bar spins, tail whips, the BMX bike is a little bit superior than the trials bike. But when it comes to stopping or hopping on your back wheel, with the BMX bike, you don't have brakes unless you're riding brakeless trials. The back wheel is definitely going to be a lot harder to stay on if you don't have brakes. BMX bikes are a little bit more all about doing 360s, 180s, a lot of spin tricks, and kind of like more like high speed, riding in a skate park kind of thing. Another difference regarding geometry between the two is that has a pretty big factor in the way the bike feels is the wheelbase. The wheelbase on the BMX bike is going to be a little bit shorter. That's pretty much the center point of each hub straight down where it meets the ground. That's the wheelbase, the distance between the two. The trials bike is usually going to be longer than the BMX bike, except the new school trials bikes that are starting to ride street a little bit more, that are trying to do more BMX tricks, are starting to get shorter. That's why they're getting shorter, because they're trying to feel more like BMX bikes to make the spin tricks easier. One thing you're also going to notice is the height of the head tube between the two. Now, I know these wheels are bigger, but you can still tell in the geometry of the frame, this one has a much more aggressive angle than the BMX bike does, and that's really to help with the rear wheel hops and like being on the back wheel and having it not straining your back. Probably the biggest thing also you're going to notice between the two that a lot of people point out, and when people want to try out the trials bike who ride BMX, they'll really notice the difference, is the gear ratio. When you get on this bike, it feels like you're riding in like first gear. Your pedals go really fast, you can't get a lot of speed. The BMX bike, it feels not like first gear, it feels you're like in like sixth gear going. It's a lot harder to pedal, you can get a lot more speed. You kind of get used to a little bit more with the BMX bike having it be hard to pedal. But if you're doing pedal kicks or something like the trials bike tricks, it's definitely harder on the BMX bike. but it's more oriented for a skate park where you can really pump the quarters and things like that, where you don't really need the crank pressure. But with the trials bike, if you're hopping on rocks, you really need the mechanical advantage of your pedals to be able to do that. Alright, so here we are on the trials bike. Now, as far as the different kinds of tricks you can do on the trials bike is a lot oriented with the brakes. You can kind of stay in one place rather than needing speed, because with the BMX bike you're kind of always moving when you're doing tricks. With the trials bike it's more static. You can kind of more stay in one place when you're doing tricks. Like I said with the bar spins, you can see I have these cables here that are really long. If you're doing a bar spin, then you can see the cables are getting really twisted, and you have to always spin it back after you do something like that, a foot jam tail whip. So if you're not running brakes on the BMX bike, or you have a gyro on the BMX bike, that's fine. But with hydraulic brakes, they do make hydraulic gyros, but they're not really, the technology hasn't really caught up enough to be able to use them on the trials bike yet, but I'm sure they'll come someday. But right now we still have the cables, so that's one disadvantage for those kinds of tricks. So if you're really only trying to do those types of tricks, a BMX bike might be better for you. The rear wheel hops on the trials bike are going to be a lot easier because you have brakes, so you can really just stay in one spot. Although with the new 24-inch trials bikes, the spin tricks are definitely getting easier from what they used to be. Doing a 360 or 180 is still harder than it is on a BMX bike. A BMX bike is still definitely easier to do the tricks on. I'll show a quick demonstration what I mean when it comes to getting the bike to move around. On this bike, if I lean back without holding any brakes, as far back, the front end does not come up. But if I do it on the BMX bike, if I just lean back, the whole front end comes up. So you can see how the shorter wheelbase and the geometry is kind of opted for really just getting the front end up, for being really maneuverable in spin tricks and bunny hops and just things like that the trials bike isn't really ideal for. One main difference that I wouldn't mind seeing in the trials community, maybe just because I kind of came from BMX for a little while, was pegs. The axles on the trials bikes are pretty strong, but there's a little bit of flex in them. So with the BMX bikes, it's just like a complete like steel axle that's just really rigid, so they can run pegs and really smash them and not really have any problems running pegs. But I've seen some people run pegs on the trials bikes, but it's not that popular. You're at risk of breaking your bike. I've had a front peg one time, but I kind of took it right off because I didn't want my bike to break because I couldn't afford to fix it. If they do come out with pegs, I would probably run pegs just because I love doing grinds and I miss the BMX aspect of being able to do grinds. So that's one main difference. If you want to be able to do that, you have to use a BMX bike as of right now. Earlier in the video, I did mention that the frames on the trials bikes are usually made of aluminum and the frames on the BMX bikes are usually made of steel. Now, I know that some people are going to say, oh, well, the arcade is made of steel. Well, yeah, you're right, it is. But the arcade is really designed to almost be a BMX bike. The arcade uses the same type of cranks that the BMX bikes do. The 3-piece cranks that you'll see on a lot of BMX bikes. So it's really starting to get oriented towards some of the BMX type aspects, but you lose a little bit on the weight. Like, it'll be a little bit heavier than just a 1-piece CNC like on the trials bike versus the BMX bike, but the arcade is really trying to be a little bit more BMX-y. So if that's one thing you're thinking about, the arcade is probably the closest from a BMX bike to a trials bike as of right now. I'm now going to attempt to ride the BMX bike. I haven't ridden BMX in a few years, so this is going to be really scary actually, because getting from onto a trials bike onto a BMX bike is really awkward. On the BMX bike, you all of a sudden feel really maneuverable, like you're going to fly off the back, and it's really scary. So I haven't done a 360 on this BMX bike in probably over a year, but I'm going to try to do it on the grass first try. It's about to be real. Follow me. Oh yeah! I'm gonna do the same thing on the trials bike. Now, because I ride trials, I will probably still be able to do the 360, but I'm gonna try to use the same amount of effort that I did for the BMX bike to kind of show you what would happen if I use the same kind of technique and effort that it takes on the BMX bike to the trials bike. So let's see what happens. I only got a 180 around. Now, I could push harder and do a 360. First reason is we're on grass, so it's harder in the first place. But on the BMX bike, I used the same amount of effort to do the 360, but it was just a whole lot easier on the BMX bike because of the smaller wheels, the geometry, everything just kind of makes you just want to be able to spin. So I'm gonna actually do a 360, and that took a lot of effort. So trials bikes aren't really ideal for doing those kinds of things. Yes, you can still do them, but if you're looking for something where you only want to do that, or that's the style of riding you really want to do, trials is going to be a little bit more difficult to do that kind of thing, and more frustrating if you're trying to learn that. Guys, I love you. They're saying, you don't have to say that, but no, I do. I don't know how close right now when this video is going to be uploaded to 1,000 subscribers. Hopefully I'll do a special video for 1,000 subscribers.
Oh, that's gotta happen.
I feel kind of lame for saying 1,000 subscribers, but you got to start somewhere, you know? Hopefully I'll do a cool video for 1,000 subscribers. Make sure to like the video. If you haven't subscribed already, subscribe to the video. I hope this helped you tell the difference between these two types of bikes. If you have any more questions, leave them down below in the comments. Have an awesome day, and I love you all.